Okay. Okay, let's get going here, and hopefully some more people will join us as the morning progresses. And we're going to start the video at this point, if I can find the, say around 8:05. Okay. Our first question is, we have one short question, which is, what arts, let me get the light on here. What arts, where are we here? What arts, if any, will help evolve, change your jiu-jitsu? Or will jiu-jitsu evolve how you practice other arts? I don't know who did anyone, were one of you the person who came up with the question?
No.
I'm because the question is somewhat unclear to me, and that's why I prefer the person who asked it. Maybe it's, but they're not here, so that's irrelevant.
I think it's a good question personally. After
Yeah.
reading it, and I don't know who wants to go first.
Well, you can go first.
Okay. But when it comes to jiu-jitsu, and uh, if you were to break it down, it has everything. Uh, it's most specific for Budoshin Jiu-Jitsu. It has karate, aikido, and judo. So if you are at the point where your jiu-jitsu is stagnating, you can easily branch off to each of these specific disciplines and focus more on those particular disciplines. In my case, I am taking karate, Shotokan karate, mostly for the kata, but also for the movement and the it's like the generous science around Shotokan, like being able to move in those deep launch stances. Um, and then I also do judo. So there's a lot of benefits with doing these separate disciplines. When it comes to judo, there's a lot of live sparring. There's a lot of randori is what we call it, and it's a very good way to perfect your throwing technique and make your throwing technique and takedowns work on a live resisting opponent. It's kind of difficult to do that in jiu-jitsu because of all the joint locks that we do, which is why Kano, Jigoro Kano, came up with judo is so that he can practice these throws in a safe manner. Um, so those are two arts at minimum that I feel is very beneficial that can help evolve jiu-jitsu. Uh, Aikido helps with the flow and redirection. I myself do not take that martial art. I don't have the time for that. That's especially with everything else that I'm doing. Boxing, it I feel like it is another one, so that would be a third one that I practice. And then number four, I feel is very beneficial, and it this is something that my training partner Christopher and I have realized as we are training this martial art, and that is Kali, a Filipino martial arts. Yeah, Kali, Eskrima, and Arnis. These are the three major martial arts under the umbrella term of Filipino martial arts. And the reason why I believe this is very beneficial is because as we are training in stairs in knife and empty hand in Kali, uh, Kali we have we have trapping, we have a flow where if there's a strike coming in, I can parry it. Guess what? There's an armbar right there. There's a throw. There's a takedown. It helps link everything together between from outside range to inside range. Now I have a takedown. I have a jiu-jitsu technique, and it just flows very beautifully. So Sensei, if you ever see Christopher and I do a free flow drill, you are most likely going to see a lot of those elements come into play. The Kali is linking our jiu-jitsu, and it's making our jiu-jitsu more powerful. So those are at minimum the four martial arts that I believe is very beneficial and will help evolve jiu-jitsu to make it more jiu-jitsu.
Okay. Anyone else have?
Yeah, I also along with Budoshin Jiu-Jitsu, I'm affected by Tillman karate, pressure point karate, because there comes the medical perspective more into the self-defense and how the blood veins works and how the nerve system works and how you can hit the nerve systems. And in addition to that, then Kenjutsu, where you have the swords. Also, Jiu-Jitsu, it's basically Jiu-Jitsu with a sword. You have the same techniques applying in sword techniques as you have in normal Jiu-Jitsu, for example, batsoon handling. So those two affect my style. Pressure point karate and then Kenjutsu. That's the two additional styles that I like to train to and have effect on my Jiu-Jitsu style.
Okay. Any other?
Yeah, Sensei, I don't believe that there's any limitation as to what it would be to have your jiu-jitsu evolve. Ultimately, it all becomes jiu-jitsu. It's your jiu-jitsu and how you continue to make it evolve throughout time. And it should never get stale. It should always continue to evolve. And that goes from every aspect of it, physically, spiritually, mentally. But then when you're looking at the physical aspect of it, application-wise, being creative on how to enter techniques, do techniques different ways, counter techniques, translation, continue to add techniques to where you can go from one technique to another. I mean, those things, any other thing can ultimately add to your jiu-jitsu and continue to have it evolve, and the possibilities for that are limitless.
Okay.
Yeah, I definitely agree with Darren there, and specifically now I'm training with Al Gauthier, who's been on these calls in the past year, and his background is entirely in Korean martial arts, especially Tang Soo Do, Taekwondo, Hapkido,
Yep.
and his tendencies will be to respond with harder techniques than a jiu-jitsu person would to the same attacks. But because he has the Hapkido background as well as these more hard linear forms, you can see that he has different options that I might not have automatically thought of as a jiu-jitsu person mainly. So his resolution to things would be maybe a punch or a kick or something like a knee strike rather than something that would put someone in a joint lock. So it's good, as Darren's saying, to have that kind of exposure to different possibilities, especially with somebody who has an understanding of jiu-jitsu techniques, as a Hapkido person does, that he has the soft options as well as the hard options. So it's always good to see that.
I think also it would translate to why we participate in conventions, conferences, seminars, clinics, whatever. Usually when we work within our own dojo, we're constantly seeing the same type of approaches, the same type of application, the same type of result, the same type of way that you're performing a technique. And then you go somewhere else, right? And just one little thing is completely different. It's still jiu-jitsu, right? but it's a different way of approaching it. It's a different way of applying it. It's a different way of being able to counter it. It gives you a totally different perspective. Therefore, you've right in that moment, again, you've had your own jujitsu evolve. It just gave you something else.
Okay.
I think the good thing about jiu-jitsu is that you can apply everything to the sport. It doesn't restrict anything, any weapons or you can. The jiu-jitsu have no restriction because it's an old samurai sword or art and military uses it. So you can apply everything. So everything you train elsewhere and learn there from, you can actually use it in jiu-jitsu.
Okay, I think. Go ahead, Jay.
I use Taekwondo in with it. Not the sport Taekwondo, but the low kicks, like in the joints and all of that kind of stuff. So I kind of mix it all together.
Yeah, I think what everyone is saying is that the traditional jiu-jitsu gives you a sound foundation to build upon.
Exactly.
And as you learn or try different martial arts, or you see things from different martial arts, we find it very easy to incorporate those things into what formerly could be called jiu-jitsu. And jiu-jitsu being, I guess what I call it, a parent art, it's very easy to incorporate those things into the art and blend them in.
Yeah.
I think it's the blending.
Yes, I definitely agree.
Yeah.
If anything, the parent art, and as you say, I kind of consider it more like the grandparent because of how many other arts that splinter off. It all comes back to that one point in jiu-jitsu. Now, and I have an interesting point. I have seen Jeet Kune Do practitioner using jiu-jitsu as well. He's a black belt in both, and I'm just after seeing him, I'm just trying to picture in my mind Bruce Lee doing jiu-jitsu. That would be a sight to behold.
Yeah.
Well, I think if you look carefully, you will probably find a bit of jiu-jitsu in Bruce Lee. You know, inevitably there are moves that cross all the martial arts, and I don't know whether you can say, oh, it's jiu-jitsu or it's just a natural body movement or what. But I think, like I said, I think what everyone is saying is that it's possible to blend anything else you've learned. I don't know whether it's correct to say into jiu-jitsu, or you can find that if you're like practicing Kali, you find a way to incorporate jiu-jitsu techniques into the Kali. It's a two-way road, and I think that's what's nice. I mean, there are techniques that I don't teach the same way as Seki taught them to me. I've worked with Wally J, and I learned a lot from him in terms of small circle jiu-jitsu, but he also picked up a few things from me. They were kind of like surprises to him. So that it's, how do you say, it's a lot of give and take. And I think that's the nicety. If you're in jiu-jitsu and you're open-minded, that's the key.
Yeah.
Open-minded, you can learn a lot from other arts. And I mean, like when I was studying with Seki, I also studied Katsugo from Hal Brocious, which is a totally different kind of jiu-jitsu. And I was very upfront with both sensei because I respected them, and I told them what I was doing, and their basic policy was, that's fine, but whatever you've learned at the other dojo stops at our dojo door.
Yep.
Yeah. And that's kind of a standard I've had here too. With my students. I mean, I don't mind them bringing something in, and doing it or showing it. That's one thing. If they'll ask to show it to the class, fine, hunky dory. Where I kind of draw the line is where they say, well, this system is better than what Kirby's teaching, or they start proselytizing the other art inside the dojo and outside the door. And that's happened 1, 2, 3 times over the last 56 years. And but that's an entirely different issue, and how to deal with that.
I have a question to Judge. Do Wally J small circle jiu-jitsu, do they teach pressure point fighting also in their jiu-jitsu style, or do they have it at all?
I'm sorry, I didn't get what you said.
They to have small circle jiu-jitsu, do they use pressure point fighting nerve techniques in their style also, or is it totally different?
Yeah, I picked up some of the small circle stuff from Wally J, and that, for example, that changed radically how I teach Keinagi hand throw, because Seki taught it with a big circle.
Yeah,
and if you look, even if you look in my black belt home study course video, that's how it is shown.
Yeah.
But since that time, I said, well, I started making my circles smaller and smaller, and I found that if I just set up the hold and have my upper arms by my sides and just pivot my left foot back and turn to the left, the techniques work so much more effectively. So it's not to knock what Seki taught, because he was teaching a concept. I just think the small circle theory has kind of caused me to make some of the circles that I use smaller, and because they're smaller, they tend to, I don't know if they tend to be more effective, or they tend to lock up the other person a lot faster, because you're dealing with you're dealing with a smaller radius, and you're applying the same amount or more torque, and it gives the poor uke doesn't have as much time to respond, to put it bluntly.
Sensei, I believe that we're kind of riding a fine line with what the interpretation is. I'm only going to comment because I think I'll take us way down a different path on what I believe the topic is, some of the comments that were made. When you refer to jiu-jitsu as a parent art, right? Or that will take you back to origins. When you look at it in that regard, and you're considering all of these other systems, if you will, it doesn't matter whether it's Seikeru, Wally J, small circle, it doesn't matter whether it's Budoshin, Maname-ru, it doesn't matter whether you're doing Aikido, if you're doing Judo and you're doing just throws, if you're doing BJJ and you're doing just ground stuff, or you're doing some sort of striking, you're doing nerve attacks, you're doing these chokeholds. Ultimately, what are you doing? You're doing jujitsu. When you take it all the way back, you're still doing jujitsu. And I think being a part of any one of those systems, or any one of those styles, or any one of those types of martial arts still allows you to continue to evolve. It still allows you to continue to refine your own technique and your own ability to do jujitsu. That's exactly what it is. When you talk about the parent art, when you talk about the origins, and you get all the way down the road, ultimately that's what it is.
And I think, I'll let you speak just a moment, Robert. I think that's what sometimes gets non-jiu-jitsu people upset with jiu-jitsu people, because sometimes we will it's taken arrogantly at times, unfortunately. We will say, oh, that's jiu-jitsu. And it takes the air out of their balloon.
Yeah.
It does, Sensei. But my biggest issue with that is because, you know, and I don't think that it's an intentional learning, but it's a misguided learning or an uneducated learning, because they don't understand the true history behind the system that they're doing, and so they do take it offense because they're taking something that they believe in.
Right.
I've been studying this for a long time, so the one time that they hear different and it may refer to something else, then they take offense to it. But I mean, look, they've owned the stage for a long time now. Everyone else has. The only system that really hasn't really had the credit or recognition for, you know, the parent art or system that's out there is Japanese Jiu-Jitsu.
Yeah. And I don't think there's, how do you say, I don't look at any of the arts being, how do you say, I don't look at any of the arts being lesser than jiu-jitsu in terms of the commitment that people make to their specific art. They're sincere and they believe in their art, and that's perfectly fine. But I think also, as you said, there are, and I've seen it happen, there are, I won't say certain arts, but maybe certain senseis within an art will say, you know, our art began out of thin air, or we are the origin, or something of that sort.
We've got the secret sauce.
They got the secret sauce,
Yeah.
and what happens is their students believe them.
Yeah.
And that's what causes the problem, is that, you know, nothing. I have a bad, I think just someone emailed me the other day about their art and you know, it being unique, and I said, I finally got frustrated with them, and I said, go read James Burke's book Connections, which has nothing to do with the martial arts, but it's an approach to history which basically says that when a culture or society gets to a certain point, it will invent certain things. And so what may be a secret or knowledge in one society may, just out of circumstances, become common knowledge in another society. And there's nothing you can do to prevent it. And that's how he presented history.
Mhm.
And that's how I ultimately taught history to my kids in school. And it made so much more sense because they could see the relationships. And I usually say, just go read that book, then come back and continue. It's an easy read. It takes some time.
Or Joseph Campbell.
Yeah, it takes some time, but it's an easy read, and it makes it kind of like you say, oh, I mean, like I forget who it was. When I came out with one of my jiu-jitsu books, a karate guy came out with a book on karate, and it was basically like we covered the same material, but from a different perspective. He was doing karate, I did jiu-jitsu. And we've written back and forth a couple times, you know, and it's just, I wasn't offended by it. I was pleasantly surprised, but, you know, I had read Burke's book already. So I said, okay, it just happens. There's common knowledge. And I think Darren has mentioned, there's common knowledge in all martial arts. There's
The other statement you'll often hear after thousands of years, there are only so many ways of moving the human body in a martial arts way or a self-defensive way. So to think that you're coming up with something unique in a martial art is very unlikely. It would just seem that maybe you're emphasizing something more strongly or less strongly, and you're organizing an approach rather than doing something different. You, like jiu-jitsu, theoretically you can do anything. It's just that we emphasize a certain range of techniques that may not be emphasized by another art, but it's crazy to claim that you're doing something unique in a given art.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I agree with you. I mean, you can only bend the human body in so many different directions before it breaks. Robert, you've been very patient. I'm sorry to put you off.
Well, I was just going to say, I think the history element is a big key to understanding things. You know, a lot of I come from a number of different backgrounds. I studied a Korean system called Jungshin-do, which is like a cousin system or sister art to Warang-do Kokusowan. In fact, it's so close that the forms are the same. But nevertheless, I learned a lot of stuff that encompassed throwing, locking, and all that stuff. But you know, some jujitsu people would say, "Well, that's not jujitsu," and I would say, Korea is next to China, and it's next to Japan, and they've sort of kind of, you know, there's been a lot of cultural sharing. You can trace, you know, Hapkido back ultimately to Daito-ryu, controversially maybe, but you know, okay. But you know, truth is truth wherever you find it. And you know, only in America are we so inclined to put labels on it. You know, like if you talk to some people from China, Chinese practitioners, because part of my background is Kung Fu as well, and you ask them, well, is that green swallow broadsword? I don't think so. I mean, it has some elements of green swallow broadsword in it, but you know, it doesn't. And they'll look at you and go, oh, you're from the United States, aren't you? Because they know we're the only people that care about that. The Chinese will look at the form and go, yeah, sure, green swallow broadsword, yeah, fine, that's what you're doing, great. You know, they just don't really get absorbed in labeling things and limiting things as a result of the label. In some respects, it's a little bit like calling somebody a liberal or conservative now. It's almost a ridiculous label, because you know, liberal or conservative in what area? Okay, you know, so be precise in your definitions, and I can tell you where I sit on the political spectrum. But but it seems to me that we lose sight of the history. Like Kempo, a lot of Kempo guys will tell you, oh, it begins and ends with Ed Parker. Yeah, bullshit. That it doesn't begin and end with Ed Parker. That's ridiculous. That's like saying you were born pristine. It's a virgin birth. You know, oh no, that's not what happened. And it's you know, and it insults them when you say, well, weren't we called Kempo Jiu-Jitsu at one point? I believe that's what Parker's certificate says, Kempo Jiu-Jitsu. And they
Yeah, I think so.
but and it kind of blows their mind, because they don't know how to respond to that. And I said, and we didn't have forms really originally, and we didn't have names for the techniques originally. It was number 1 yellow, number 2 yellow, or number 3 purple, or whatever it was. And I said, you know, there's been an evolution of that system over the last 50 years. And I said, so, but let's look at where that evolution began, and then try to tell me that it began and ended with Ed Parker. And they just don't know their history very well. Nor are they really interested in figuring it out. But it comes down to, you know, looking at the history of things, looking at the near proximity of those cultures. You know, I teach mythology in high school, myth and folklore, and oh my God, how many times have I said, well, yeah, you know, that's funny. That's a little bit like this Greek myth, which is a lot like this Shakespearean story, which came right out of the Greek myth. And, you know, I mean, we can sit down and have discussions about how cultures are similar or dissimilar, but we have to acknowledge that they impact each other. And that's the big deal. I mean, I like, from my original mother art, I guess you could say, I love the throws and the locks, and that stuff is just big time. I'd love it. I've always loved it. And I came into Kempo and they said, oh, that's a bunch of shit, don't do that. Okay, sure. You know, I mean, out of respect to you guys, sure. And then I got into a fight one night. It was a Christmas Eve, actually. I think it was actually a Christmas gift from my attacker to me. I figured out that what saved my ass in that fight was not any Kempo techniques whatsoever. It was actually me being able to lock this guy and put him down that actually saved my bacon. And I think, you know, well, okay, you know, and then I started practicing that stuff again. And I said, you know, no, you guys are just wrong. That's all there is. What day are you coming to visit? Okay, we won't do it that day, but otherwise we're going to do it. and they, yeah, it strikes me that if it's good, it's going to be there. I mean, Kota Gaish, where's that? Everywhere. I don't know of any system that teaches a you know, a locking system where they don't have that. Even Kempo has that. And the Kempo guys will say, well, we don't do any of that stuff. And I go, you don't? Really? When was the last time you practiced those extensions that Parker taught in the latter part of his life? Oh, you didn't learn those. What a shame, because they have all kinds of locks and throws in them. And they just don't grasp that. And I think connections is a really great way to put that. There are some connections that are there that are universal. And if you can find something that's taught by like 8 or 9, 10 systems of Aiki or even, regular jiu-jitsu, it worked for somebody somewhere along the line, and they obviously did it so well that it made its way into other systems as well. It evolved. It moved into other arts. So I find it, the key is having an open mind. I think, as you pointed out, I think that's a really big that's really big part of the process. If you have people that just look at things and say it's our system and we got the secret sauce, well, you're going to find out that the secret sauce is probably Thousand Island dressing, but it's not that secret after all. And I tell my kids there's no secret sauce. The secret sauce is elbow grease, hard work. That's your secret sauce. If you want to know what makes you good, that's what makes you good. You get on the mats and you make sure you're on the mats doing your thing, and that is what makes you good. And I guarantee you there's people out there that are just awful. And the reason they're awful is because they don't spend any time on the mats. It has nothing to do with their art or their, now there's some logical connections that you want to make between one move or another. But a lot of times we lose some of those logical connections and hence make our art maybe less effective because we've forgotten about the let's get on the mats part of the process. And
I think if you can show how techniques work on the mat, that's the justification for them. But once you get into what you're saying, and I've noticed also where there's an historic tendency to once you've codified a system, to be very defensive about that and to say we don't do it this way in Kempo, or we don't do it in this way in this other form of martial art, is a very limiting stance. Because if someone else has a way of modifying a technique to do it better or to have different results, then you should be open to that. And it's more of a power thing that comes with trying to sort of ossify and solidify a system, but that ultimately weakens it, I think. And
set up an organization.
From beginner's mind.
Yeah, you have to set up an organization, and then you need organizational loyalty, true. But my first teacher, I stayed with him my whole life, and the reason, or his whole life rather, but the whole reason that that I kept being drawn back to him was if I brought him something and I said, hey, what do you think of this? I mean, this is fairly unique. And he'd go, not really. Let me show you something else. And so he'd show me that and he'd go, now, can you see the evolution from this to this? And he said, what seems unique is really just something that somebody worked out and decided, I'm going to put my own little tweak to it, and one of my kung fu teachers, a guy who teaches me praying mantis, and I love him to death, but we have a pretty frank relationship. And he said something about, I was studying another kung fu system. He goes, oh, that's a made up system. And I started laughing and I said, Tony, every system's made up. Every system. I said, don't tell me that this is a made up system and yours isn't. Praying mantis is made up too, just 900 years ago. Okay, so that's the only difference. Choi Li Foot was a made up system, and I mean, you get right down to it that somebody got taught Choi family art, Lee family art, and Foot family art. And after a while, he decided, I like this part and this part and this part of these three systems, and I'm just going to put them all together into one thing. And so he might as well call it, the art probably should have been called My Favorite Shit by whoever, and that would have been, that's it. That's what it comes down to, is my favorite stuff, and really, even, I've got my own little approach to jiu-jitsu, but that's my favorite stuff. I'll freely grant that, I'm just saying it comes from exposure to a lot of different things. And it's a fairly unique mix of those things, but it's not that any one part of it is somehow unique and has this secret sauce attached to it that And when I was a kid, I really believed in that secret sauce stuff. I was looking everywhere for the secret sauce. And even the systems that I studied that were like, I studied Warang Do at the time in the 70s. That was secret sauce. They were all over the place. And I found they weren't really secret sauce. They were teaching the same stuff that I'd learned before, but they just had a cooler name and cooler looking uniforms. But
I think what happens is when people develop their own system, it gives them a certain amount of security and sense of well-being and confidence. And what they ultimately do is they say, this is the way this technique, or this is the way this should be done, because that has worked for them. Therefore, it should work for others. And any variation is insulting the secret sauce of the god McDonald's. And there are, even in jiu-jitsu, there are some systems where there's only one way to execute a teinagi or kotegaish, whatever you want to call it. There's only one way to do it, and they have specific names in English and Japanese for each technique. And then you go to people like Seki, who said, well, I did a search this week through the Budoshin Jiu-Jitsu Densho. I think there were like 39 different ways to do a teinagi. I used the PDF file, put in teinagi, and there were 39, came up 39 different times. I mean, so, I think most jiu-jitsu people are pretty open-minded to the fact that there's more than one way to do something. And I think that's where the problem is with many of the martial arts. And as Robert said, probably every art uses teinagi in some hand throw, in some format or way, whether it be a throw or the positioning is for submission or lock or what have you. It's the same concept. And once you accept that, then the style or root is irrelevant. But don't tell that to anyone.
that'll be the secret sauce for this meeting.
There is no secret sauce. I know when I was younger, and my family I wouldn't consider them to be well off. We actually made Thousand Island dressing by mixing mayonnaise and ketchup. It's not a bad combination if you do it right. And that became our Thousand Island dressing. You may think that's disgusting. I do too at this point. But your secret, I guess your secret sauce is what you make it out of. So anyway,
I would like to piggyback off of Mr. Roberts' comment on Ed Parker, and there was a gentleman that's on YouTube. The channel name is The Art of One Dojo. He goes over the history of how we have Ed Parker's Kimpo system would continuously evolve from start to finish until his later years. And he also touches on the history of how Ed Parker was introduced to another version of the martial art, like what was it, Hawaiian Kimpo, and everything just, it's like, if you look at how everything is described, And Robert keeps mentioning it. Even Darren mentions it. Like everything just keeps coming back to this one thing, and we all have it. Even Shotokan Karate has some of these throws and joint locks. A martial art that is very, very linear, and it's known for deep low stances. You have the punches, you have the kicks and all that. They have joint locks in their system. You just gotta find it. Oftentimes, if you look at it as a certain martial art, look at what their focus is. In the case of a lot of sport taekwondo, a lot of sport Shotokan, it's very sport based. They're very everything's about boom. Okay, now you're out. It's kind of losing a little bit of the martial way, right? But I mean, it's another aspect of these martial arts, and right, it's just we all every single martial art has something, and I do kind of consider jiu-jitsu as one of the main parent arts. You can easily say this it's a main parent art, because you also have other systems like Chinese Kung Fu. They have their own system, but they're all connected in some way.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, jiu-jitsu is the parent art within the Japanese culture, for sure. But I don't know about anywhere else. But I don't know that that's important. You know, it to me, it's one culture's way of adapting to their own unique combat needs. And I love Darren, by the way. I've worked with him extensively, but his history is, well, we might want to quibble with that a little bit. But I would say, I would say for me, it's like you have the Chinese arts, and even within Chinese Kung Fu, you have all these divisions that have evolved in the Chinese arts to simply work a concept or an approach that, again, is a unique adaptation for that particular culture and people. Bagua, I've studied that a little bit, but I think it's interesting to me. Bagua was always fascinating to me because it seemed like the thing that just wouldn't work at all to me. And then I was at a tournament once officiating, and son of a gun, if a guy didn't use Bagua and walking the circle to an incredibly effective end, he won the tournament. And I thought, yeah, he straight up Bagua adapted to the needs of the competition environment, but by golly, he did very, very well. And from my standpoint, I always thought, that was probably not possible, but we're proven wrong sometimes every day. So I just think a lot of it, we have to look at the people groups involved. We have to say, okay, well, for this people group, this was a mother art within this people group. Where did they derive their training? Well, that's another question. Were they influenced by other people groups? Of course they were. Were they influenced by their environment? Of course they were. Were they influenced by the type of combat that they came into vogue in their culture? Of course they were. But I think that you can't say, well, there's this one core thing from which everything emanates, and I think it emanates within the people group, I think, and then migrates. In mythology, we call it myth diffusion, meaning it just goes everywhere after a certain point.
Right. Okay. I'd like to change topics at this point, because Jay has been exceedingly patient for months and weeks, because he's dealt a lot with the issue of bullying, and he's done some writing on it. And so our next topic is bullying in public and the martial arts. And I think the first thing we need to do, we need to define what bullying is, because there is a difference between bullying and pushing a person towards a positive goal. There is a difference.
Yep.
And people confuse the two. And people involved in this includes all of us as sensei, people involved in physical education or bodybuilding or whatever, anything that involves the human body, we tend to have a lot of problems with it, because we think we're doing the right thing and we think we're encouraging, and it may come across to others as bullying. So I guess the first thing we really need to do is, how do we want to differentiate bullying from persistent encouraging? I'm going to use that phrase.
Persistent encouraging.
Persistent encouraging to do better. Okay. So anyone want to do the differentiation? Or
I think a lot of it has to do with intent. That's pretty much the key phrase in trying to define bullying is what is their intention? Are they intending to try to lash out on you? Is it negative? Are they pushing you around just because they're bigger and stronger than you? Are they just in general, for lack of better terms, being an asshole? They're just mean. They're just mean. They're destructive, and it's all the aspects of bullying. Hey, give you your lunch money. Why? I'm gonna buy my own lunch. Intention. Now the what was that term that you said with persistence? Positive persistence?
persistent encouragement.
Yeah. It kind of that's more I think I was doing this to a friend of mine when he was having a lot of trouble with his teeth, right? And he's not doing anything about it. I'm going to bully him, in that sense, to basically make him get off his butt and do something about it. And instead of just laying around and complaining, he eventually did, and he's happier for it. And do you know what I did after he did that? Good. I'm glad you're happy. Move on. And I dropped it ever since. There's no need for me to pursue it any further. I am encouraging him to do something that is beneficial for his life. So again, you have intention.
Okay. I'm jotting some notes down here.
Now,
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I've been in situations where I've basically, I had a kid when I taught 12th grade government, and he was a total gangbanger.
Oh, Lord.
And one day, I mean, he was failing the class, you know. He wasn't a bad kid, he just had an attitude. And one day he says to me in class, he says, "Mr. Kirby, when are you going to stop dissing me?" And I looked at him and I said, "When you stop dissing yourself, I'll stop dissing you." And he looked at me like someone had hit him over the head with a frying pan. But he changed. And he actually pulled a C in the class by the end of the year. So sometimes I think, is that bullying, or is that, how do you say, you can get on someone's case because you want them to do better. or you believe they can do better. But
I think it's encouraging, not bullying.
yeah,
And that's my opinion.
yeah, I mean, that's encouraging, but they may not. How do you say it's a fine line in my book.
Yeah, they think you're bullying them. I've been in that situation. You're picking on me.
Yeah,
No.
I think
Go ahead.
I think it's a question, as our friend said earlier, I think it is a question of intention. I came up in the brutal era of martial arts training where, they were making you tough. My teacher used to whack us with a shinai if we didn't block hard enough, fast enough. And one day he caught me. There's a little scar still there. And when I went home, oh my God, my mother freaked out. Oh, you're quitting. That's it. Oh, you're done. That's it. Oh, she was freaking out. And my dad came home and he looked at me and he said, "What happened there, Mel?" And I said, well, Dad, I didn't block fast enough. He said, "Well, block faster next time." And that was it. And he turned to my mother and said, "He's not quitting. That's not in our DNA. That's not what we do in our family. He's not going to do that." And she backed off, and my dad, made sure that I was there from that point on in class. And but I got to admit, later on, I go into the military, and the branch of service that I was in, I went to the Navy, but the branch of the Navy that I was in was fairly renowned for being tough. And when I got through that training, I went, okay, I can see how that helped me. And then I went to combat, and then I realized, boy, did he really help me, and there's I'm not sure where I'd be right now if not for him, as a matter of fact, but it certainly wouldn't be in a good place at all.
Seki would constantly try to encourage males in the class to wear a cup. And on rare occasions, whether one or two times, he would line up all the male students. He'd get out a handbow, walk his way down the line, and just give. It wasn't hard; doesn't have to be. Just a little tap. But everybody wore a cup, and you wonder. He did harass people. I mean, when a 10-year-old dislocated my elbow, when I taught one of Seki's classes, and a 10-year-old dislocated my elbow because I wanted to see what would happen if I resisted. And the little turkey had the armbar set properly. So, as Seki said, you dislocated your elbow. And every time I showed up in class for the next 2-3 months, he would spend 2 or 3 minutes harassing me for that. Now, I understood that his intention was, because he also told the class, don't listen to what people tell you if it's demeaning. And he lost a lot of students because they couldn't put up his physical harassment. That wasn't bad. His verbal harassment was.
The mental part.
He went this part, and what happened as a result of that is there's a lot of stuff that just doesn't get me, quote unquote, mad, where I lose my self-control.
Right.
And I owe that to him, also to my dad, because my brother and I used to have fights up the kazoo. And finally, and I was the older one. Finally, my dad said one day, he said, "I'd get punished if I start a fight." He said, "Look," he said, "if you start a fight, you get in trouble. If your brother starts the fight, if he hits first, he's in trouble." And that resolved all sorts of problems, because I knew what the plan was. And I made sure my younger brother hit first. But
of course, that's big brother.
No, but the point is, some of that harassment, even though it's negative, can be well-intentioned if you can see through the harassment. But that, again, is different in my book than bullying because the intent is good. If the intent is for me to get your lunch money or I'm going to beat the out of you,
Yeah.
that's bullying. I mean, that's beyond bullying
Yeah.
because the intent is negative. So I think who said who came up with the term we were was dealing with the what is the intent initially. I think
I did.
intent, yeah, Eric, intent is the key. And I've had to explain myself to parents,
Oh yeah.
Mhm.
and they're okay with it. You know, and I've even had to explain myself to kids after the fact. You know, you do it. I mean, it's
Yeah.
in my book, it's only fair because sometimes when they understand the reason why you did what you did, they say, "Okay, now I understand." You know, no one is, how do you say, there are very few people that are intentionally stupid. And if your intent is good, then your target will be more likely to accept it. If your intention is to cause bodily harm or something of that sort, that's a whole different ballgame.
If
And
you mind, if I jump in a little bit, I want
sure,
to. The reason why I am able to pinpoint and that it's intention, that's what's going to separate bullying and persuasive or persistent encouragement, is because when I was a kid, 6th grade, 7th grade onwards, I wasn't that big of a kid. I have a hearing impairment, and just that hearing impairment alone made me different from
Yep.
everybody else. And that's when I get picked on by some of these kids, right? And their intention was to make my life a living hell.
Yep.
Well, you had this bullying. I'll get to this element of how this links to martial arts, but you have this kind of bullying that is just uh, they want to put me down. They see me as a target. I'm the weak one, and it's they will put me down every step of the way. They make fun of my hearing. I'm
Yep.
into video game. Okay, they're making fun of my video games. Okay, dude, just back off until it gets to the point where now I'm fighting back. You want to bully me? Come at me. And the reason why I am linking this with martial arts is because um, by around 6th grade, I was learning kung fu or some form of kung fu. I believe it's kung fu sensu, at least that variation of it. And there's a little bit of the Muay Thai that I was basically learning 2 arts at the same time. That gave me the encouragement. It's either encouragement or stubbornness. I don't know which one it is, but let's just say I was always in the principal's office. You have these bullies that are they're trying to pick on me. They see me as a target, and now I
Yep.
won't back down anymore. I'm taking them. I'm fighting them. There's even this game brainer that decided to stab me up the back of my head. Guess what? Bam! Side kicking into his ribs. He was about ready to throw it down. Guess who saw the whole thing? Teacher. He saw everything right there. I'm
Yep.
like, let's go.
Yep.
It so these bullies, it kept going on until I reached 9th grade, and I was on the football team. I was lifting weights, and then I hit a growth spurt. I got too big. Everybody stopped messing with me. So it's this that's just if you're growing up, you already know kids are vicious. They're really
Yep.
brutally vicious,
Yeah.
and it's bad. So that's why I remember it so vividly. All the stuff that I've had to go through as a kid.
Yep.
Now, when it comes to bullying in the workplace, again, it's a different kind of bullying.
Yep.
Now you
Been
have
there.
these people that are trying to be assholes. They're trying to throw the weight around. They're
Yep.
trying to. It's oftentimes when it comes to these kinds of bullying, they are insecure. You have the intention. Now you have the reason behind the intention. They are insecure,
Yep.
and it's just I'm this new guy that came in, and all of a sudden I'm a target. This
Yep.
guy thinks he can boss me around, and it's he's not even in my department. What are you doing? And I link this to martial arts. There's that either it's giving me the confidence, or I'm
Yep.
just very stubborn. I don't know which one it is, but it's tempered me to the point where I don't back down. I'm not getting into fights anymore. That's back in 7th grade. But excuse me. But when it comes to bullying in the workplace, bullying in school, bullying. Sorry, that was a big bird I just saw. It's just bullying. Period. You become less of a target when you are start fighting back in some form or shape.
You stand up to him.
And it's just you got to be able to stand up for yourself, and
Exactly.
and you do have people that are if you have people that have your back, that are willing to back you up in some way. Oh, it's even more powerful. These bullies in the bullies in life, they're losing. It's a losing battle for them. And oftentimes, if you look at what these bullies are going through at home, and where their insecurities are coming from, it's kind of sad, really. Like you have dad that's drunk. He's beating his son. Son comes to school. He's lashing out, and he's choosing the smallest kid. He's beating him up. It's a cycle, right? And then later on, you see that same kid that was your bully. You see where he is in his adult life, and he's still stuck in that insecure position to the point where, I mean, he's practically a bum. He's on drugs. He's been in prison, etc. And it's a cycle that he or she, they're trying. They don't know anything else. That's their life. And it's in a way, these people that are bullies, they are. It's in a way, it's a cry for help. And again, it is the intention. They don't know how to direct that intention. So right now we're trying to define bullying and persistent encouragement, and this way we can look at how bullying takes place in school, in the workplace, or in a martial arts academy, and what we can do to basically discourage bullying.
Yeah.
There's a couple of things in here. I've seen bullying occur between kids out in the schoolyard. I've seen it in my classroom. And I found one of the most effective things was, at least as a teacher, was sometimes you can intervene. but sometimes you don't get a chance to intervene before the victim responds to the bullying.
Yeah.
And in every case where that has happened, because I knew there was a track record, I would simply say to the bullier, because they say to me, "Well, aren't you going to suspend him or do whatever you're supposed to do because he hit me or something like that?" And I'll say, well, if I have to consider everything else that's gone on, who do you think is going to get in trouble? And I leave it at that. And many times that actually stops the problem. I think one of the best ones was there's some guy in one of my classes. He had been harassing this girl for days. I don't know what the problem was. She finally got tired of it in the middle of class. Apparently he said something, and she just turned around and backhanded him across the face. And it really surprised him. And he said, "Mr. Kirby, she hit me." And I said, "What would you like me to do about it?" And he says, "Well, she hit me." And I said, "What did you do to cause her to hit you?" And that kind of ended it right there. He didn't bother anymore.
He knew.
He knew. And I think sometimes, as Eric has said, and probably, I don't know whether you've been in that situation, sometimes the situation gets to the point and you have to allow some type of, I call it a controlled repercussion, to make it a lesson for the bullier to realize this is not an acceptable thing to do. And if you do it, you're going to end up with the short end of the stick, and no one's going to do anything about it. You're going to be the loser. You hate to see it go that far, but sometimes, how do I say, and I've learned this so many times, if you allow, I've had where I've broken up fights, and rather than suspend the kids, which is what I'm supposed to do, and a bunch of garbage, because then the parents get involved, and kids don't want their parents involved, the whole 9 yards. I would pull them into a room and I said, you know what the options are in this school. I said, what's the problem? And I said, you've got about 5 minutes to resolve your differences verbally, or you're both being suspended. And they'll do it. They'll talk to each other. They'll resolve their problem. Sometimes you just have to take the two people, whether it be the bullier and the victim, and put them in a face-to-face situation where if the bullier doesn't get his act together, he's probably going to be the one that ends up with the short end of the stick. Okay, because in a fight, there's usually one person who is the cause.
Yep.
Or it may be a third person. Then I've actually, if it's been a third person that actually caused these two people to fight, the two will make up their difference. They realize who the problem child is. And then I'll have that child pulled out of class and have him suspended because he caused that to happen. He needs more attention. But the point is, bullying comes from many sources. And at least from my experiences, if you can put the bullier and the victim together, with the bully realizing that if this isn't resolved, he's going to get the short end of the stick. The bullier isn't totally stupid.
No.
He'll get his act together. And that's, a lot of I know from experience, a lot of teachers won't even bother with that.
Yeah, I've been there.
I figured it was just easier to do it that way. It eliminates all the paperwork. The kids learn that they're actually each other's pretty decent person. Life goes on. And when I was younger, second or third grade, I ran into a pole, I was running on the schoolyard, you're not supposed to run, and I chipped one of my front teeth, which gave me a lisp. And so, yeah, I was harassed for a couple, 3 years because I had a lisp. You know, so I can understand how a physical, I'll call it an impairment.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
You stand out like a sore
Yeah.
thumb.
Yeah. Eventually, my parents paid to have the tooth filled properly or capped properly, which was a real expense for them. And that stopped the harassment. But it's many, to me, it's so wrong that, you know, just because a person has a physical impairment, there are people that, as I forget who it said, the only way other people can feel secure in themselves is by harassing another person's weakness or making fun of or using to create a negative situation.
I mean, I remember what a bully is. He is really a coward. He won't power over you because he can get away with it.
Yeah.
But once you stand up to him and look, I'm not doing it no more.
Yeah.
And I hate to say it, beat the piss out of him or hit him or, you know, get him off of you. He don't mess with you no more.
Yeah. I mean, it's sad that you have to do that.
It is. It's very sad. You go and you explain, look, I was born this way.
Yeah.
You know, I am different, but I can't help it. But they want to harass you, make fun of you constantly, and they get a big kick out of it because other people around them are standing back watching and laughing and doing this and that. Now, later on, when I wrote that book, these people I went to school with read the book. Bullies. They contacted me on Facebook and apologized. We didn't know how, we didn't know you had feelings. We were just having fun. They don't know you had feelings.
Yeah, well, young people don't have that emotional maturity yet.
They don't.
I mean, it's only when we get older that we realize how stupid we were.
Yeah, that's basically what they said. And now they're helping their kids to understand we don't do this to people.
Right.
Everybody is different, no matter what. I've even been harassed by other martial arts instructors on account of my speech. They'll say, well, they just give you you just got a black belt because they felt sorry for you. And no, I earned my belts. They didn't give it to me because they felt sorry for me. And I'm just aggravated. It really is. Like seminars. I like to, go to seminars and tell my story of what I went through as a kid. My mom and dad had a fight to get me in the school system. This was back in the 1960s. All right? They told my mom and dad that I was mentally retarded because I had a speech problem and wanted to send me to a mental retarded school. And my mom said, no, he's not. He's got a speech problem. They cannot correct it because back then they didn't have the knowledge. And they had to go to the school board. I had to go through, and I can remember everything, go through all these mental tests that prove that I can go to a regular public school.
Yeah, it's
sad.
Yes, it is. And even today, I mean, I retired in 2006. Schools do not have the adequate resources to deal with kids who have, and just because I say it, I'm trying to be very tactful here, just because they have a physical limitation, it doesn't mean that they're stupid.
Exactly.
It doesn't mean that they're any lesser. They're just as sensitive as anyone else.
Exactly.
And I mean, I would have, I remember I had one kid in my class for, actually I had him in my class, I think for 2 years. He was blind. He was an A student.
Wow.
The kids loved him. They took care of him. They protected him. If he needed help, they gave it to him unselfishly. It was just so nice to watch.
Exactly. You
And
don't see that now.
and I think part of it is I couldn't figure out why they, you'd have a whole class working for this kid.
That is great.
And I never had to say anything. And it was just part of it was that's the way he was. He was able to garner that
Yeah,
love and support.
exactly.
And I don't know what gave him the perseverance to be that way or what it was, but he finally confided in me towards the end of his senior year. He says, you know what I'm really disappointed about? I said, what? And he held up the Braille typewriter.
Yeah.
He says, when I graduate, I have to turn this back into the school district. My parents can't afford to buy one.
Wow.
And I mean, they supplied this kid with this typewriter for 12 years, and now they're going to take it away.
Wow.
This is stupidity.
Exactly.
I mean, the district has gotten its money's worth,
Yeah. And then
and I mean, he ended up going to college and whatnot. I kept track of him for a couple of years, but we're just as a society, we just don't. I think part of it is we as a society don't. I don't know whether it's give the attention or can't afford to give the attention, or I don't know what the reason is. Because most of these, what we may call them partially functional people, can be far more functional if they are given the proper support.
exactly. Like Down syndrome kids. I had a thing where everybody come in it. I didn't hear handicap, whatever.
Yeah.
I helped them kids. The parents would come up to me and say, are you sure you want to do this? It is Down syndrome. And what's wrong with him? Well, you don't know? Look at I said, look, he's just like we are. I would work with them kids. They were just as smart as any of them on the floor.
Yeah. You just
made it longer.
Yeah. You just have to find out. Every person has strengths, every person has weaknesses.
Exactly.
You just have to be willing to find out what their strengths are.
Exactly.
Early on my teaching career,
I think that when you're talking about limitations, I don't think it's limitations. I think it's the perception, and the perception being a key word of being different, because realistically everyone is different, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Their own unique way. And I think that although there was plenty of good comments made from everyone, Eric summed it up really well.
Yeah, I think medications can at times have a role. And I generally knew if I had some kids that were on various medications, and fortunately most of them were for physical conditions rather than depression or mental conditions. Right. And I forget what it was. There's something that causes you to go into I had a couple kids who had epilepsy and they were on medication.
Yeah.
And I had one that didn't, for whatever reason, she hadn't taken her meds that day. and she had an epileptic fit
Oh Lord.
in class. And fortunately, because I had first aid training back in the 60s where you learned a hell of a lot more than you learn today in first aid. And they taught us what to do if a person had an epileptic fit. And so I just went through the process. And by the time the nurse got there, she had calmed down. And the nurse, put her in a wheelchair, took down, and the girl went to sleep, which is a normal response by the physical body after an epileptic fit.
Yeah.
Physically exhausting. And the person really just wants to go to sleep, but they need to be monitored while they're sleeping. And she was so appreciative the next day. She apologized.
Mm.
I said, you don't have to apologize. You didn't do anything wrong. I didn't want to bring up, well, you should have taken your meds.
No.
Because that is, that's not the right thing to say to anyone when they've had if they haven't taken their meds and then they suffer the physical consequence.
Oh yeah.
That's the worst thing you can say to a person, because it just, you should have taken your meds. But I think we're getting away from our topic here, but of bullying, but let's see, where are we on this? We got questions here still. And I've had, if we go into the martial arts dojo, there are students, and there are even teachers that are bullies.
Yep.
They'll have a person thrown until the person decides to quit the class. I've had a couple of students who they didn't care how hard they threw their
Oh man.
or if they injured them. And they usually a person of that type student, they would get 2 warnings from me. The second warning was, sit off the mat, and you're off the mat until you think you can function like the rest of us, because I'm dealing with the safety of other students. And I don't, I learned, I say, if you're a sensei, you do not mess with the safety of your students. That's you're the, what do you call it, the mama bear, the papa bear?
Yeah.
And you're responsible for protecting the cubs,
Yeah.
even though they do stupid things. And I've lost a few students that way, because
Wow.
they would just get up and leave. And they occasionally, I think on 1 or 2 occasions, I got a call from a parent, what happened, and I'd tell the parent, and I'd say, and so is more than welcome back into class if they can change their behavior, if they're
Yes.
or if they're willing to try to change their behavior. And unfortunately, none of them came back. But those are few and far between. But there are people who just, I don't know, they just, their satisfaction is in seeing other people hurt physically or emotionally.
Exactly.
And those are the people that really need help.
Man.
So
Yes, you do have those kind of people, the people that are sadistic. Those are the ones that you need to watch out for. And it's also, you do need to also you need to have a process to weed out some of these people that are their intention is to hurt people, the real bullies, pretty much. And I know this is another topic. I think this is topic B for martial arts, is how do you deal with these bullies in the martial arts dojo? How do you prevent them from hurting other people? How do you how do you prevent the destruction of your dojo? That one person can destroy an entire dojo, and you ask the sensei or the instructor or coach, whatever title you prefer. That is your responsibility. You need to be able to protect your students. If you are not able to protect your students, you're going to lose your dojo or your martial arts academy. So that's another topic that we need to touch on with bullying in a martial arts setting.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the part B of question number 2. If you have those questions in front of you, is bullying in the dojo, and I mean, I have a set of safety rules that are posted. I think they're 12, and they're the same rules I've used for the past 50 years. And one thing, if you're going to have rules for your students, and I learned this early on as a classroom teacher, the more rules you have, the more time you spend enforcing them, and the less time you spend teaching. I've seen teachers where they'll spend half the class enforcing rules. And at that point, you have to say, because I was a master teacher, and I'd be, I had a lot of student teachers from colleges that I would supervise. And you have to say to them, are all these rules necessary? Now you have rules. The reason you have rules posted in your class is for the safety of your students. And as long as you follow them, you can expect them to follow them as well. And very rarely do I have someone who violates them. Because I simply say on it, if you violate these rules, you may be removed from the mat or removed from the class for your and other students' safety. It's not because they broke the rule, but because safety is the reason you got these rules. But they do have to be simple. That they shouldn't have to be explained. And one of them, I think, is you somehow said no excessive force, cooperate with your attack. There has to be cooperation, but a lot of issues can, I think, be preempted if you have a good set of safety rules that will include things that might prevent students from bullying each other.
Yep.
You don't have to say bullying will not be tolerated, because we've had this discussion. Bullying can mean many things.
Yep.
So you have to say, your rules have to be very, very specific and at the same time very general. And I maybe have to refer to those rules maybe once a year. Now, they're also posted. The other reason they're posted is for liability reasons.
Yep. Insurance.
Because
yep.
if they're posted, then no one can come back and say, well, they weren't posted, or nobody knew what they were, or yada, 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 and so it's a CYA for you as a sensei. If you don't know what CYA is, it's cover what you're sitting on. But as a sensei, you need to have that posted.
Yeah.
Just for your own, protect yourself. And students will follow them because they even when I had in the classroom, I had very few rules. And I've in most class situations, it basically came down to treat other people like you would like to be treated.
Exactly.
And that's probably the only rule. I think that was probably the only rule I had in the classroom, because everything fit under that. Kids can figure that one out. Because if they screwed up, you simply say, would you like to be treated that way? It's how you say from what was the movie? was going to think of Andy Cup, but who is the guy that the shrimp?
Forrest Gump.
Forrest Gump. You know, as stupid is as stupid does. Okay, it really, that's what it came down to. And,
Yeah.
and you don't have to be, how do you say, you don't have to be heavy-handed to discipline someone. If you can do it lightly with a sense of humor initially, and they get it, fine. You can become an SOB if you need to. I had a thing where before we could send a student out of class, we had to go through all this paper garbage before we could send them to the counselor. We had to call their parents, we had to send home a note,
Oh my
we
God.
had to move their seat, and there's some kids that what I finally decided to do, which counselors really detested from me, I got tired of filling out these forms all the time. So I'd have a couple kids, maybe out of 5 classes. I just have a Xerox stack of them. And I had them on the board behind my desk. And a kid caused a problem that I was getting tired of. I simply point to it. I said, I just point to that and look at them. And you know, because part of bullying, which I think Jay and Eric have both said, part of bullying, part of the reason for bullying is people get a sense of accomplishment and success out of it.
Yep. Power.
That's why they do that. And
Yep.
if you remove that quote unquote reward, they'll change your behavior. This is for anyone, for anything. If you take away the reward that they might get for doing whatever they're doing, they'll stop doing it because there's no reward.
Yeah.
And that's it's a hard concept for a lot of people to get. And the same thing occurs in the dojo. If you're a sensei and a student has a mannerism that is, I'll put that politely, a mannerism that it's hazardous to other students, you can be very upfront with them and say, look, when you stop doing this, then I'll consider you for your next promotion.
Exactly.
Because as we all know, the purpose of martial arts is not only to, teach you a martial art, to hopefully effectively defend yourself, but we're looking at making you a better person as well.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's part of our responsibility as sensei is to make our students into better people. And that's part of the package.
Exactly. Have more respect for people.
Right. And so we as sensei have that responsibility. And sometimes if the student is serious and they realize, oh, there's a belt there, or I really want to make the sensei happy, or whatever their rationale is, they'll do it just to get the belt. And then you can go back to them and say, after they got the belt, see, you changed your behavior, you did this, and that's, and if you maintain this, you'll continue to progress. And I've used this phrase for students, I have full faith in you.
Yeah.
I believe in you.
Well, you know what we used to do? My son, Robert, we used to give them a gold star on their belts if they were good. At the end of the month, whoever had the most gold stars, we would buy them a weapon or whatever they want.
Yeah.
And it worked.
Yeah. Students, particularly kids, thrive on rewards.
Mm-hmm.
For a while, I think my wife even did it because she taught elementary. You really can't do this with junior high or high school kids. It doesn't work that well. But she'd have a chart on the board with every kid's name, and whenever they did something good, they get a star after their name.
Yeah.
And at the end of the week, the 2 kids with the most stars will get a reward or something, something.
Yeah.
it could even be a candy bar. It didn't matter what it was,
As long as they got it.
as long as they got it. And there are so many, I hate to put it, there's so many stupid ways that you can get people to change their behavior
Yeah.
in simple ways. But we as sensei, that's part of our responsibility, is to help make this person a better person.
Exactly.
And it may be, the dojo may have a code of conduct. I mean, I keep it simple with, what is it? Integrity, humility, and respect.
Yeah.
There are some dojos I've seen where they've got 20 or 30 things that you're at, which I think is way too many for anybody. All these things will make you a better person.
Yeah.
And they will. I mean, I'm not knocking it. It's just, I think I think all of us has mentioned in one way or another here that you have to follow the KISS theory, which is keep it simple, students. You thought I was going to say something else. But you have to keep it simple. And the simpler you as a sensei can keep things, the easier it is for you. Number one, the easier it is for you to enforce it. But number two, the easier it is for the students to follow.
Exactly.
And get them to where you want them to go. Like I said, I've seen teachers and I've seen sensei that have a whole, a book of rules.
Yep.
And it just, it's you got to keep it simple. And dealing with a bully, you got to keep it simple.
Yep.
And as that girl did when she backhanded the boy across the face, and he expected me to do something, and I just looked at him and went, stupid is a stupid. I didn't say that, but he, I figured he learned his lesson
The hard way.
and it didn't hurt, other than humiliating him, embarrassing him. It didn't hurt him physically. And
Well, my daughter done that. She was riding the bus, and we bought her a backpack. And the boy kept on it every day and breaking it. We had to buy her a new one. And I told my daughter, look, just smack him. I didn't mean hard. I just smacked him and leave you alone. They don't do it anymore.
Yeah.
Well, he backed it and broke his nose. We get a phone call from the school. Me and my wife go up there. Yeah, what is it? Your daughter's in trouble. She just broke a boy's nose. And they knew I was a martial artist. Knew she was. I broke his nose. Yeah. He broke her back 5 times. The dad come up there and wanted to know what boy done it to him. And I'm to find out, when he found out it was a girl that done it to him, he wasn't mad at all about it. He was embarrassed that his son got his nose broke by a girl.
Parents, surprisingly, I have never had a parent get upset. Well, only once. I've never had a parent get upset with me over something that has happened in a class. If there was, someone got hit or something like that. Many times they would end up being upset with their own kid for starting the problem, which is why the kid doesn't want the parent involved in the first place.
Exactly. They never done it no more to her.
Yeah. I mean, I think I mentioned it the last time that when I broke up a fight between two girls and one girl had a wig. It was after school. And
man.
Fortunately, Hal Brocious taught us a way to break up a fight between people, by grabbing their hair. It worked beautifully. Both girls went down, except I'm holding away. 200 kids cracked up laughing.
Oh, wow.
Next day, the mother is in, I get called out of class. Principal wants to see me. The mother is there. She says, I want Mr. Kirby arrested for assaulting my child.
Oh Lord.
And the principal looked at her and said, okay, then we'll have to have your daughter arrested for assaulting Mr. Kirby. And she got up with her daughter and left. And that was it.
That was the end of it.
That was it. But that's the only time
Wow.
in 39 years of teaching where I ever had that situation come up. And he was a very pro teacher principal. He expected us, he expected us to put out about a 6'2" Irish guy.
Hey.
I knew if I had done something wrong, he would have chewed me out in front of the parent, no doubt.
Oh yeah.
But he just looked at her calmly and said, okay. But I think the point is, bullies get their satisfaction out of seeing other people, quote unquote, hurt.
Yep.
And once that reward is taken away from them, they will change their behavior.
Yep.
Or once they face the consequences of doing what they did, they may change their behavior.
Yep.
You got to take the reward away. And that's in anything. Kid wants a promotion or student wants a promotion.
Exactly.
You expect this, and there's an attitudinal issue. It can even be an adult. And you have to approach adults differently. I've had one student where he just constantly did things wrong. And I finally pulled him aside one evening and I said, you have to calm down. That's the only thing keeping you from getting these techniques down and getting a promotion. If you can calm down and control your, I don't know whether it's excitement or apprehension or, fear or whatever it is, if you can control that, then things are going to fall in place. So anyway, Eric, okay. Got to talk with Eric. Are you still there, Eric? No.
He's gone, Sensei.
Oh yeah, he's gone. Okay, I got to find out how people are leaving notes, but I don't want to do it during a Zoom meeting.
It's on the chat.
Pardon?
It's on the chat.
Yes.
If you click on the chat, you'll see the notes that are on there.
Yeah.
Where's the chat? Where?
At the bottom of the screen.
Okay, what am I looking for?
The chat.
Chat.
Oh, chat. Oh, okay. Duh. Okay, it's right in the middle of the screen. Okay, I'll check that out later. But anyway.
You probably need to check it out now because I think once we sign off, the chat erased.
Okay, well, it says there are 5 there, so I'll check out how to do it because sometimes can a chat just be sent to one person or does it go to everyone?
Either way.
What you select.
Okay, good. Okay. Okay, anyway, do we want to do anything else with bullying at this point or?
No, I have an amusing story to relate. I'm friends with a guy named Dave Meyer, who I think you're familiar with.
Yes.
And he's now in the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu world, and we're good friends. I'm totally not in the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu world, quite deliberately for a number of good reasons, I think. But he and his partner, John Will, used to do their certification clinics when they were holding them in Las Vegas. They held them at my school. And they had a bunch of his guys there, and one of his guys raised his hand and said, I have a question, Dave. And he said, sure, go ahead. And he said, well, I was in my class, teaching my class in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, when all of a sudden there were 2 guys in the class, and they just started fighting for real. What do I do? And Dave sort of laughed and snickered, and he turned and looked at me and he said, "Tell me, has that ever happened to you, Bob?" "No." "Why is that?" "I set certain expectations in place, and if they break those expectations, they're gone. There is not even a debate." And he said, okay. And he said, "So what would you have done?" I said, "Well, first of all, he would never have come to that, because I would have had a long since had the 'it's time for you to go' discussion with him. But the bottom line is, he would have been duly warned that if he got, I would have broken it up and then said, 'Have a nice day, you're out of here,'
Yeah.
whoever started it." And I said, I don't have any problem at all with doing that. One of my favorite sayings of Confucius is, "The superior man understands what is right. The inferior man understands what will sell." And I said, I completely get that there are people who are afraid of the business impact of throwing people out. I get that, but that I have a duty and an obligation to my students that I can't allow that motive, the profit motive, to override what I think is right.
Right.
And so that's where it has to end. And I've run a fine school that's quite profitable for now 27 years. So it can't be all wrong, can't be all bad doing it that way. But that to me is a traditional way of approaching the art. It's, and I think Dave wanted me to kind of lay that out for him. So he said there are protocols in place, in other words, that are not broken. I said, that's correct.
Right.
I said, because it's safety. It's basic safety. Everybody, in order to learn, the first thing you have to do is be able to feel safe in a classroom. You
Yes.
can't learn if you don't feel safe.
Yes.
And this is true in an academic classroom. It's also true in a martial arts classroom. And it's kind of funny. In my high school, we had a reputation for having a tough high school when I went there. It's still pretty tough by reputation. When I first started there about 8 years ago, almost, they had kids that would just, the fights would routinely break out in Fight Central, which was right in front of my room. After the first couple of fights were broken up, that was it. They realized Fight Central needed to move. So it moved up the hallway to my colleague's room, and he would do the same thing. And after that, Fight Central moved to the cafeteria, where they realized, holy crap, they're on us faster there than anywhere else. And then the Fight Central moved to the various places. And my colleague and I became a traveling road show. We would go wherever they went. And after a while, they just realized, not a really great idea to mess with the former Navy SEAL 9th degree black belt. So they just moved on. The worst fights were the girl fights.
Yes.
Because they really engaged with an intent to do serious damage. And we have a school that's about third white, 1/3 black, and 1/3 Latino. And the black girls are always wearing wigs. I forget what they call them, but they have that stuff in. And there were two black girls going at it, and I went for one, and my colleague went for the other, and we just about had them separated when the other girl reached out and grabbed the other girl's hair, locked down, and then we couldn't get them apart. Well, I reached out, and the other girl reached out too. So I reached out with both my hands and whacked them on the back of the hand, hit the pressure points, and they went, like that. And I went, good. I got mine. He got his. We pulled them apart, took them down. And at one point, we got a two-girl fight where we literally had the same problem, and I took them both down. But then we had other girls jump in, so we literally I had to literally kick one girl to get her free, so she wouldn't. She was starting to zone in on the two girls that were down, and she was going to go in and beat them. So wow. I kind of did an exaggerated step and kicked her and moved her out of the way. And but that's the kind of crazy stuff that you see in academics today.
Yeah.
And it
girls, if same in martial arts, if you get in a random or a situation, even with jiu-jitsu, with rules or whatnot, girls are far more efficient fighters than
that's true.
Boys are. And the reason they're more efficient is because guys have rules of conduct in fighting. Girls, no, there are no rules. It's win.
Yeah.
And it's a whole different
the guys don't really want to fight to begin with.
No.
They're there because of some, you know, perceived wrong or whatever, and they, about the first 3 seconds after the staff intervenes with a guy fight, they're like, hold me back, hold me back. I'm like, nobody's holding you, dude. Just stand there. Okay.
I used to,
But they don't want to fight. The girls, on the other hand, wow, they're into it. They want to fight. They're just
the
highly motivated.
Yeah, the principal basically told us, he says, if you have to break up a fight between girls, be prepared to be scratched, bitten, kicked.
Dang.
Guys won't do that, but girls, you're in the way.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Anyway,
And one girl fight that I intervened in, and she was swinging hard on the other girl, but I caught her punch before it got there. And then she was going to turn and punch me. Well, I locked her up and put her in a hold, and she, ow, that hurts. And I said, yep, it's going to hurt a lot more if you try to punch me. And I took her down the stairs and turned her over to the assistant principal and said, here you go, she's all yours. And but they start them in the craziest places. But you notice one thing about teachers is there's a teacher who, like myself or my colleague, who will go in and for safety's sake will do what we have to do. But
right.
You know, some teachers will go, yeah, I'm going to pass on that. You just go right ahead.
You know, most teachers will pass on because there's a fear that they're going to do something where they will end up getting the short end of the stick.
Yeah. Oh, true. Yeah.
And the first school I was at, if we didn't have one good fight a week, there was something wrong.
Yeah, I know. That's about where we were when I was there, about 3 times a week.
It just was I say if you can do things that don't hurt anyone or injure anyone, you're going to be okay. And as I said last time we met there, I jokingly say one reason I probably never got in any trouble was I never left any marks. And to me, that's one of the strengths of jiu-jitsu training, is that you can go in and break up a fight or put a person in a control hold or take them down, and you don't necessarily leave any marks. And
no lasting damage. Yeah,
that's, to me, that's why I like jiu-jitsu, is because it gives. Seki always stressed control. We know you can, you know, all these things can break joints, dislocate joints, sprain, cause concussions, but your key to doing all this stuff properly is by exercising control. And he said you can create a lot of pain without actually injuring a person. And that's why you're practicing this stuff on each other, so you know what it feels like.
Yeah.
It you know, there's a method to his madness. And you know, that's why you learn to tap out and all this other stuff. But you know, that's the way it was. And but anyway, I think we need to stop now because we're getting into almost 2 hours.
Wow.
So
wow, we are.
Next time we're going to hit, is there a difference between a dojo and a club? What do you do when a technique doesn't work? And then we're getting into some areas from, I forget his name, but the difference between Aiki and Ki, dirty techniques, things of that sort. But that's probably a month away for that. So anyway, why don't you have a great rest of the weekend?
You too,
Snow
sir.
behind me.
You too.
Snow behind me isn't there in California anymore because of Southern California. And as they say down here, if you don't like the weather, wait till tomorrow.
Right. California has 4 seasons. They have summer, and they have fall, and they have fire season and Oscar season, and you know,
Oscar season, earthquake season, and
earthquake season and flood season now.
When I taught up in Bakersfield, they had 2 seasons. One was called summer, the other was called fog. And they had what's called Thule fog.
Oh God. Yeah.
Which is just caused by a temperature inversion, and they would actually have, some school districts have what are known as snow days, where there's no school because of snow. They had actually had fog days where the highway patrol would
Wow.
prevent the school buses from going, because you couldn't see more than 5 or 10 feet in front of your headlights.
Dang.
And so many
Yeah.
kids were bused.
True.
They said, okay, but we had probably 2-3 fog days a year.
Yeah. I went to school there, so yeah, I know exactly
Yeah,
what you're
so
doing.
it's,
Yeah.
but Bakersfield has other unique characteristics too.
Yes, they
I'll go into
do.
that.
Well, right.
Back then it was really a hick town. Anyway, I think it's improved. Anyway, want you to have a good weekend. Darren,
Have a good weekend, everybody.
take care, Darren. Take care, Jay.
Thanks, everybody.
Take care, Joni. Be
Thanks.
kind to people. Smile. Drives them crazy. We'll see you on the 18th. Okay.
All right.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
bye.
Bye.